All right, today's video is on the Ukraine war. Um, Now, there's two competing narratives you generally hear on the internet. One is like the more kind of Western narrative, like the standard one you probably hear if you live in Canada, Australia, US, which is that, Putin's more or less this imperialist hellbound on conquering the world, and the only thing that's going to stop him is if you can outgun him, right? And then you get kind of like the Mearsheimer or more like, Saudi Arabian, Indian narrative. And this is like the one where it's, NATO expansion caused this war, Western aggression provoked this war, right? So, which of these is true? That's what we want to analyze in this video. And the answer is quite simple, it's just both. I don't know why these things are mutually exclusive, all right? When we look a little bit into history, we can see the America is a expansionist empire. If you don't agree with liberal democracy, we're going to conquer and overthrow you. This has happened in like 100 countries or more, right? And when we look at the, Russia and or even the USSR before that, it also has this empire mindset. All right, so now we're just going to substantiate both those claims. Let's just look at some facts which are indisputable, okay? First one is that Russia's invaded many countries. Yeah, they've invaded Chechnya, they've invaded Ukraine, they've invaded Georgia, etc., right? And the easiest way to know that Russia has an imperialist mindset is the fact that they're not even hiding it. Okay? In the Tucker Carlson interview, Putin himself says that historically Ukraine was part of Russia, and this is one of the reasons that they're invading it. They believe they have a historic claim to this land. That's a pretty weird argument. I mean, it's like if the UK attacked the US or Canada, because historically it was a British colony, right? So I don't even think Russia is trying to hide imperialistic aspirations. And that's not the only reason they invaded, okay? But it is a reason. Now, how do I know for sure that the US meddling and all this kind of stuff also is a major cause of the war? Well, you can go on to NATO's website, and Ian Stoltenberg himself says that the cause of the Russia-Ukraine war is NATO expansion. This is this is Ian's own words. Okay, so NATO is not even denying that they played a large role in causing this war. Like, this is one of the silliest things I've ever seen in my life, because usually when you have a war, both sides are trying to do this, PR campaign, right? Where they're trying to look good. But in this case, neither side is denying accountability. All right, so first I'm going to go a bit into the Ukrainian perspective here. Okay, so back, what was this? I forget the exact year, maybe in 93 or so, Ukraine made an agreement with Russia to give up its nuclear weapons. And in exchange, Russia would do several things, but one of them was respect the territorial integrity of Ukraine. That's one of the terms of the agreement. But Russia didn't do that. In 2014, for example, they annexed Crimea, which is a violation of this agreement. So after that, you have all this really bad relation between Russia and Ukraine. The Donbas wars break out. They try to have several more agreements like these friendship acts, but both sides are caught violating these agreements for various reasons. So, in 2022, you have this pending Russian invasion. And Ukraine has all the right in the world to not trust Russia because they've done diplomacy with Russia before, and Russia violated the terms they agreed to. However, you can still do what you'd call mutual mistrust diplomacy, kind of like the Iran deal, right? The Iran deal, the U.S. mistrusts Iran, and Iran mistrusts the U.S. So you make diplomacy in a way where both sides don't trust each other. Now, if you go back in history, you hear this thing about NATO saying they wouldn't expand 1 inch eastward. Is this true? Yeah, it is. It's in the. You can go to George Washington University. They have the government documents. They've been declassified, and the U.S. did guarantee the USSR that if they allowed Germany to reunify, NATO would not expand 1 inch eastward. But then they expanded to like every country in Eastern Europe. Now, I don't know whether, NATO expansion is any kind of real threat in the eyes of Russia, or whether it's just more of like a blow to Russian ego and kind of humiliation because they got kind of scammed on this deal, right? They got played, right? So it's a blow to Russian pride. And maybe Putin's trying to kick back, to, get back at the West for doing that, right? And since 2008, Russia's been talking about how Ukraine joining NATO is a really big issue for them. It's going to really piss them off, right? And the way our governments responded, I remember it very well. I was reading all this at the time, right? And the American government said, and the Ukrainian government said, the topic of Ukraine joining NATO is not even up for discussion. So that's pretty bad diplomacy. And now it gets worse than that. You look at Canada, we did this kindergarten diplomacy. You can read it right here. I'll post it up. Like, you look at this letter. This guy is a diplomat, supposedly. I mean, he's trying to create war. I mean, either he's that stupid or he's just trying to create war. I don't know. Probably a combination of both. So, in the beginning, let's say Ukraine and US agreed to not join NATO, not to put Ukraine in NATO, and they discussed this topic with Putin or whatever. Would Russia have still invaded? They might have, right? It's entirely possible they might have. They'd be probably less likely to, but they still might have, right? Again, Russia has these imperialistic aspirations, but it crosses off one of the reasons on their list for invasion, at least, right? So the last thing I think, maybe for the Ukrainians, I think they should really consider this a lot is, what is Ukraine? Is it this land? Is it this history? Is it this culture? Well, above all, I think it's the people, right? If every Ukrainian on earth is killed, then Ukraine is, in my opinion, gone. It's just history, like the Babylonians or something, right? It's not a living thing anymore. So, the people are much more important than the land or anything like this. And if you're getting to the point where you're, sacrificing all the people for this dirt, that doesn't make sense, okay? You look at the Jews, for example. The Jews had to leave their home many times. They went spread throughout the world, but their culture, their religion, the people live on, right? And, it's a setback. It's nice to have your own territory that you can call home, right? But sometimes crazy things happen. All right, so I think that's a pretty good summary of Ukraine war. What do you think? Do you think I missed any really key facts? And, I think it's a really simple situation in many senses, because it's like you have this broken cookie jar and you have two kids and they're like, well, which one of you did it? And they both go, I did it. I'm like, okay, well, that solves the problem. I mean, they both took accountability. No one's denying responsibility here, so that should solve this pretty easily, right? But there's just too many crazy people in power, right? Like that Anthony Blinken guy. He is just out of his mind. Okay, you listen to some of the stuff he says. He turned down the Chinese peace plan, and I quote him, because it called for both sides to stop fighting. How can you have a peace plan if one side is still fighting? That is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard in my life.